to the Builure Pulse, your go-to destination for all things Salesforce. I'm your host, Inshu Misra, founder and director at Builure with more than 30 years of experience within the Salesforce ecosystem. Join us as we explore a day in the life of Salesforce professionals. From Salesforce DevOps architects to CRM analytics specialists, we'll uncover the insights, challenges, and triumphs that define their daily experience. So get ready for engaging conversations, expert insights, and actionable advice to boost your Salesforce journey. Whether you're looking to advance your career, streamline your processes, or simply stay ahead of the curve, join us on this exciting exploration of the Salesforce ecosystem. Let's get started with today's episode focusing on a blind Salesforce project lead. We have Ertay Shashko here with us today, and we are so thankful to him for sharing his experiences with us. So without much delay, let's talk about him. Welcome, Ertay. Please introduce yourself and let us know your journey from the very beginning within the Salesforce ecosystem as a blind individual.
Thank you, Inshu. It's very, very nice to be here. So, hello everyone. My name is Ertay Shashko. I live in North Macedonia, which is a small country located in the Balkan region. So we are located just north of Greece. I work as a Salesforce project lead at the Blind Institute of Technology. Mainly, I work in our delivery team, and we deal with client implementations. So we have projects where we implement Salesforce from scratch. We have projects where we enhance our clients' Salesforce organizations. Mainly, we do admin and development work. So my journey, how did I get started? So right now I am blind, but before that I was sighted. So I started losing my vision sometime in the mid 2010s. So it started degrading rapidly around 2015, 2016. And at that time I was working as a freelance mobile developer. So I was developing apps for Android, iPhone, and Windows Phone back then. Well, it was still a thing. So after I started losing my vision, working as a mobile app developer became a bit tricky because you generally have to deal with implementing user interfaces, right? So I don't know, a designer passes you some designs, let's say created in Photoshop, and then you need to implement those in the apps. So as I was losing my vision, that became a problem. Okay, is this purple or is it gray? So I realized that I needed to do something, otherwise I wouldn't be able to continue doing my job. So I started researching how do blind people use the computer, and it turns out there's a software called a screen reader. And what a screen reader does is it translates text on, your screen into either audio or braille, if you can read braille. And most people use the audio version. So I started learning how to use that. It was a bit difficult in the beginning because at least in North Macedonia, we do not really have good support services for the blind. Like there wasn't really an organization where I could, let's say, reach out to get training. So I had to learn how to use it on my own. I feel lucky because I already had, my background was in computers. I graduated at the university and my major is in computer science and engineering. So I already know how a computer functions, how programs are laid out, generally how software works. So I could, learn it on my own. But obviously, it's better if you can, speak to someone who already is using that kind of technology. So after finding some friends online, met some new blind friends who were able to, direct me to teach me, some shortcuts and stuff like that. It started becoming easier, to use the computer and get back to the speed that I was, using the computer before because I had to slow down, When you glance at the monitor, you can see so many things at the same time. When you switch to a screen reader, you're basically navigating the computer in a linear way. So let's say you start from the top. If you think of, let's say, a website, when you open a website as a sighted person, you see the entire layout at once, right? With the screen
Mhm.
reader, that's not the thing. You let's say start from the top. You go through the navigation bar, for example they have like the home, the about us button, the contact us link, and then you have, let's say, the first heading of the website, and they might have like
Mhm.
a call to action or something on there. Then you have some text, some images on there, etc. So it's a different way of accessing the same
Mhm.
information, right? So after I felt ready to get back, to working
Yeah.
again, the pandemic started in,
Yeah.
early 2020 and lockdowns began.
My.
So, maybe this was a bit lucky for me because most organizations started moving towards remote work and, working from home. And this is something I think, well, not just for me, but for most blind people and maybe for most disabled people, this was a good thing because it's, much more comfortable when you don't have to deal with having to organize travel to the workplace, going through all kinds of obstacles to get there first. So I did read a post that the Blind Institute of Technology was running a Salesforce admin course, and it was
Mhm.
completely virtual. It was open to people outside of the United States. So BIT
Mhm.
is based in the United States in Denver. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, let's see what this is. At that point, I had heard about Salesforce, but hadn't really done
Mhm.
any research about what you can
Yeah.
do with it. Like most people, when you see the name Salesforce, it's like, oh, I don't want to do sales. Like that was my
Mhm.
first reaction,
Yeah.
you know? But then as you explore it a bit more, it's so much more than that. And
Yeah.
I realized that I can use my software development, computer science skills
Mhm.
to work on this platform. And at that time, BIT, I believe, like advertised it as it's a completely accessible thing that blind people can do.
Mhm.
So went through the academy, and at that point, BIT was starting out with internships, and they were also starting up their consultancy side of the business. So the
Mhm.
delivery team was forming at that point, and I became one of the first interns at BIT and started working on an actual project for another nonprofit organization. In 2021, I got my admin cert in
Yeah.
May of 2021, followed by my platform developer one cert
That's
in
great.
December of the same
Yeah.
year. It was a really nice experience to go through the academy, then get some hands-on experience, and then attempt the exam and pass on the first try. That was really something I was quite proud of. The admin exam especially
Mhm.
is can be quite tough because yes, it is like the first exam you go through,
Yes. Yeah.
but you need to absorb so much information for such a
Yeah.
short time.
Yeah, I remember my journey as well. So, like, I totally hear you. It's a lot of information because that's the first certification that you do in the Salesforce ecosystem when you don't know much about how does it function. Like, if you spend a few more years and you understand a bit of Salesforce ecosystem, it becomes easier. But when you're new to the ecosystem, that's when people mainly take that certification exam, and it's a lot of information.
Yeah, so that was really nice. Also a boost, in confidence. After I
Yeah.
I got that exam, I liked what I was doing, at least while I was an intern at that point. And in October of the same year, BIT hired me as a full-time Salesforce admin. And yeah, we continued
Congratulations.
working. Thank you. We
Yeah.
continued working on more projects.
Yeah.
Then we started our official like apprenticeship program. So BITs are recognized, at least so in the US apprenticeship program provider. And right now, let's see, we have two programs. One is for Salesforce admins. The other one is for digital accessibility analysts, and their jobs usually deals with improving accessibility in any kind of software, so websites, mobile apps, other digital tools. So I believe right now we have around 10 apprentices in the Salesforce admin apprenticeship. As a Salesforce
Mm.
project lead,
Mhm.
I work with them on real projects. So basically, our pipeline is people go through the academy and the best students have a chance at becoming apprentices when, there are openings to hire new apprentices. And then they work with the Salesforce project leads from the delivery team on delivering projects. So it's a great way to actually get some hands-on experience with real projects, because this is currently one of the main problems in the ecosystem, where you will go through Trailhead, you'll, let's say, train for the exam, you will pass the exam, and then when you look at job openings out there, it's we're looking for a junior admin. You need to have 1, 2, 3 years of experience before you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
apply, right? And
yeah.
how do you show that experience? So with us giving the chance to our apprentices to work on a real project, it becomes a bit more easier to get a full-time, job placement. And that's BIT's goal. So Blind
Mm,
Institute of Technology's mission is to place people with disabilities in meaningful tech jobs. So we
mm.
try to find success both for the professionals with disabilities who are looking for a job and for employers who are, looking for people with disabilities for their organization.
That's great. You mentioned that people from all over the world can apply for these programs.
Yes. So the academy, both the academy and like the apprenticeship, is open to anyone from all over the world. People that are outside of the US aren't known as
Mm,
apprentices. They are known as interns, but they go through
mm,
the exact same steps. The program is completely the same. It's just the name is different,
right.
let's say. But there is a list of competencies that the apprentices need to gain. And the program roughly should last around 2 years unless you find a job. So there have been cases where we're working for a client organization, and generally, at least with nonprofits, they do not have their in-house admin. So they usually, let's say, sign up for some managed services packages. And we have a few projects like that. So while we were working on a project like this, one of my apprentices got hired by the client, that we were helping out at that point.
Mm,
So that there are cases where sometimes the apprentices do not even get the chance to finish the apprenticeship because a
yeah.
client, for example, can snatch them and they become their own like in-house admin. And that's always amazing.
Yeah.
It's nice to see being able to place the people. So they've gone through the academy, they've started the apprenticeship, and they eventually end up in an actual position.
That's great. You must feel so proud in doing what you are doing, like as a person representing Blind Institute of Technology. It's a really great cause. So I just wanted to understand, does it work for people with all disabilities or like do you have any specific criteria? Because the name says it's a Blind Institute of Technology.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So
Mm,
initially, I believe when Mike Hess, our
yeah.
director, started and founded the organization, I believe the focus was mostly for blind and visually impaired people.
Mm,
But right now we've expanded and we are an official Salesforce training partner for people with
mhm,
disabilities. So
yeah.
you don't have to be blind or visually
Mhm,
impaired in order to
mhm,
qualify for our programs. We
yeah.
have people with hearing loss, people with mobility
Yeah.
impairments, and
Mm,
other kinds of disabilities. People, let's say, with dyslexia, for example.
yeah.
So the program has expanded to capture anyone with a disability.
That's a great program. So if you were listening to us and if you know someone who could benefit from this program, please ask them to register. So coming back to you. So like we're talking to you. So we wanted to understand, how does your day look like? If you have to describe your typical day, how would you do that? What kind of tools do you use? And what kind of tools does a visually challenged person or visually impaired person use to work on the platform? So would you be able to describe a typical day in your life?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I
Mm,
use a screen reader, and the screen reader of
yeah.
choice that I use is called NVDA, so
Mm-hmm.
non-visual desktop access. It
Yep.
is actually a software created by an Australian. It's an open source screen reader. It's like the pre-competitor of JAWS,
Mm,
which is a paid program. And my typical day, how does it look like? So I do log into our org because that's
yeah.
where we keep project management data. So we are using
Mm,
a managed package called Milestones PM Plus, and that's where we have our projects, our tasks, people that are assigned to tasks, etc. So the first thing is log into the org, check my notifications, see if there's been any activity, let's say from the previous day by any apprentices who are working on tasks, either
mm,
requesting some sort of help or whether they have completed something and they need something to be reviewed. We extensively use the chatter functionality in Salesforce to communicate with each other. I use an email client, so we are using Google Workspaces but I'm using the Thunderbird email client as it is much easier slash faster to organize my email compared to just using Gmail, the web app. Let's see, after like going through, any outstanding items that maybe they're from the apprentices, I check email from our clients generally, see whether there are any new requests, for example, or any new issues that have been reported that need to be fixed. So there's like client communication involved. Depending, for example, where in the month we may be preparing some trainings. So we have monthly apprentice training sessions where someone from the delivery team or maybe some guest speakers are delivering 1 to 2 hour training sessions to the apprentices every month, like think about a specific topic.
mm,
And yeah, we generally do, some other project management related tasks, and we'll starting new, let's say, in-house projects to improve our own org. We have built an apprentice portal, so using Experience Cloud in our own org, where apprentices can log in, get access to their tasks, log their time, how much they're spending on, a particular task, and then they can also use the chatter functionality through their portal to communicate with, other apprentices or the delivery team on
mm,
there.
yeah.
And finally, the last tool that we use is Slack.
Mm,
Slack is a super accessible tool to communicate, with each other. And we have started using Slack in the academy as well, quite extensively. So students can collaborate with each other and also, familiarize themselves with the tool because
mm,
it's what most organizations out there use. So a
yeah.
very easy way to talk to people and, use text communication.
Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned about Slack being more accessible. Would you be able to share a few examples?
Yeah.
How do you think it's like more accessible from
So
your?
I find that Slack had a separate like page with keyboard shortcuts that can
Mm,
easily let you jump through different channels or let's say direct messages between like multiple people in order to get to messages where you've been, let's say, mentioned, or if you're like following a particular channel, you're getting all notifications to quickly jump through the channels in order to get to the messages that you are looking for. I find that both the mobile app and the desktop app work quite well accessibility wise. I haven't really run into any issues with, for example, unlabeled buttons. Like one of the main challenges as a screen reader user is when you're working with some kind of software, so other, let's say, a desktop app or just a website, labeling buttons or images is very important. So, for example, when you log into Salesforce and you have access to the setup backend like pages, you do access that by clicking the gear icon on the, I believe it was on the top right,
mm,
right?
yeah.
So it's a gear icon. When a screen reader navigates to that particular icon, to us, it just tells that that's the setup button. And then when you click it, it
Yeah.
like expands a drop down. So there's no text that says setup on
Mm,
there, but the button is already labeled behind the scenes so that tools, so assistive technology, can read it. And that becomes a big problem when you have to deal with a site or an app that does not have the buttons labeled. So all they do is just have an icon on there. So, for example, if it's a pencil, most people know that's probably an edit button. But if it's not marked as an edit button, to me, with my screen reader, it will just say, there's a button here. I don't know what it
Mhm.
is. You can try clicking it and see what
Mhm.
happens, right? And it's the same thing, for example, with images, where there's alt text that you can provide for
Yeah.
images in the
Mhm.
HTML. If that is left blank, when you go through with your screen reader, it will just say there's an image here, but there's no description for this image. And this has been improving a bit now with AI in there and with some web browsers, for example, incorporating automatic descriptions of images. So if there's no description on there, let's say Google, for example, Google Chrome can try and generate a description for you based on the image content. But obviously, in most cases, it's much better when the person who has, let's say, uploaded a particular image has already described it for you so that, you can focus on the most important bits in an image.
So this is such an eye-opening conversation for all of us who don't think of putting the description or, labeling our images or buttons or any visual content for that matter. Making it so challenging for others. Like even I have that habit of, sometimes, skipping the alt text from the images when I'm in hurry. And it
Mhm.
makes, yeah, it makes difficult for the person reading it via a screen reader in order to make out what's actually mentioned in that page or the blog that we're writing or like doing almost anything on the website. So thanks for sharing your challenges. It's actually, as I said, an eye opener for all of us. And
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's not just you're not just helping, for example, blind people by, let's say,
yeah,
describing your images. You're also helping yourself because the web crawlers, for example, Google crawls all kinds of
mm,
blogs, pages, in order
yeah,
to index them. They can also read that alt text, and that helps
yeah,
you in, ranking your site higher. So in a
mhm.
way, you're also helping yourself when you produce accessible content.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. So, moving on, I came to know about the Blind Institute of Technology at Dreamforce last year and wonder if you get some sort of support from Salesforce to, overcome the accessibility challenges, because I know that it won't be easy to, navigate it yourself. So, do you get any sort of help from Salesforce or like,
Y-
do
Yeah.
you do it yourselves?
Yeah. So in general, Salesforce is super accessible, at
Yeah.
least the front end, for example. So the user facing side, so not the
Mhm.
setup and, let's say, admin panels, those are completely WCAG, so that's WCAG, I believe 2.1 compliant. Now there are some standard guidelines that need to be followed in order to, build a website, a web app that is accessible. So the front end is fully accessible. As you know, there are three major releases every
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
and sometimes when one of these major releases drops, there are cases
Mhm.
where some things can break. For
Mhm.
example, in one of the last, so not this current like spring release, but I believe in the winter release, there
Mhm.
was a feature that worked completely fine until then in the Flow Builder.
Mhm.
So Flow Builder, for example, now uses auto layout mostly and by default. And one thing that the auto layout mode of Flows brought was accessibility. Before that, in freeform mode, people with screen readers were not able to work with the Flow Builder. We
Mhm.
weren't able, for example, to connect two different elements together because it mainly worked with some sort of drag and drop functionality. And like
Mhm.
blind users, for example, do not use the mouse. We exclusively use the keyboard to navigate. So dragging and dropping becomes a challenge. And there are mechanisms that you can use to make drag and drop um, interfaces accessible, but that was not the case for the freeform build. So once Flow became accessible with auto layout mode, we could start using it. So the winter release broke the functionality of adding new elements. So you would focus, let's say, the add element button, and you would press enter to bring up the menu to choose, for example, what element to add, whether it's a decision node or whether
Mm,
it's, I don't know, create records node. It would show up the menu, but when you would, let's say, press your up or down arrow keys on your keyboard, it wouldn't read the element that you were currently on. So, they were doing some extensive updates of, at least for the winter release, in the flow builder that broke something that was already working. So our communication with Salesforce is we have direct access to their Office of Accessibility, and they have been super helpful, at least in the past 3 years that I am with
mm,
IT,
mm,
in fast tracking any critical bugs like this that we report to them. So our
mm,
process generally is we do report accessibility bugs like through the official channel. Like there is a separate category for accessibility folks, but for things that are highly critical, and you know business breaking, and this was business breaking for us, because if we cannot use the flow builder, we cannot really work with the clients that we have, at least our blind Salesforce admins or slash developers cannot interface with the UI. So they have been super helpful in fast tracking these and getting the bugs fixed. So I believe once we reported this bug with the flow builder, it got resolved within 1 to 2 weeks, I believe. So they generally do put like small hotfix patches, that are
mm.
not really
Yeah,
mentioned maybe anywhere with too much visibility. But besides like the major releases, there are some fixes that
yeah.
are pushed now and then to the platform, which is great. It's really amazing to see an organization who goes above and beyond to fix bugs, like
Mm.
these.
You
It's
also mentioned about releases. So we all know that it's an ever evolving world within the Salesforce ecosystem. So my next question is, how do you keep yourself updated? And do you go through all the articles, writing any events, or just like go through the release notes? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so stay on top of the major releases, and
Um,
why like those 3 4 months pass so fast. It's crazy how much new updates you receive in one year.
yeah.
One thing that I particularly use is on the Salesforce subreddit. So on reddit
Mhm.
dot com, there is a group, and I believe right now one person is really running this. They do post abridged release notes.
Oh, that's great.
um, so that's my primary resource in tracking like any big changes
Mhm.
that are happening. And with every release, at least for the past like at least 7 or 8 releases, I've been following that person's posts on the subreddit. Usually it gets sticky at the top for a few weeks after the bridge notes are released. I then go through the full release notes just, to skim them and see if there's anything
Yeah.
that we could, use generally, or any adjustments that we need to do.
Mhm.
And besides that, I use sites like Salesforce Ben, for example. I believe they also post, you know, or highlight
Yeah.
some functionality changes. And there are a couple of other blogs that I follow. For example, unofficialsf.com also does post some highlights about Flow Builder generally
Yeah. Yeah.
when there's like new updates on Flow. So yeah, those are the main ways I'm trying to stay on top of all of the changes that are
Yeah.
happening.
That's great. I'm sure that it's super helpful to our listeners as well. And would you like to share any advice with our listeners?
I,
Hmm.
I think one of the big things is that people with disabilities, well, most people do not think that people with disabilities can do a tech job, especially, for example,
Yeah.
blind or visually impaired people. Like
Mhm.
that's one of the bigger misconceptions. Just the other day, so just last week, I was having a
Mhm.
conversation with a client. They were looking for some volunteers to help
Mhm.
with something in their Salesforce org.
Mhm.
And we started discussing about people with hearing loss, because we have people with hearing loss going through our academy and who are certified admins. at this point. One of the misconceptions was, okay, this project is, they need to do some screen sharing with some of our stakeholders and follow like what they're doing in their job. And the misconception was, yeah, but how will the person with hearing loss communicate, with the
Mm,
stakeholder during those screen sharing demos? And people with hearing loss, so not all of them also cannot talk. There are people with hearing loss that can just talk normally, and then they can listen to the other person by using transcriptions. So I'm currently working with an apprentice that has lost his hearing, and we are working just the two of us on one particular client project, and we communicate just like with anyone else. We jump on a Google meeting. I talk normally, just like I am talking here with you. He has his captioning and transcription service running in the background, and we can follow each other in real time without any delays. We don't have to exclusively, let's say, use text communication, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the summary basically is people with disabilities should be given a chance because they will surprise you. We are people that can adapt very fast to, fast
Yeah.
changing environments, technology, because we do that every day. When, humans are interesting creatures because you do adapt
Yeah.
to a
Very
lot of
quickly.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may lose a sense. Initially,
Yeah.
it will be hard, but you can, adapt and start, using your other senses in order to compensate, for example. So we are natural problem
Yeah.
solvers in a way,
Yeah.
and those two things, adaptability, problem solving, are one of the main soft skills, that recruiters are looking for. So yeah,
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
we say at BI, this particular pool of talent is an
Mhm.
untapped pool,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that would be one thing I would share with others. Also, if there's any, people with disabilities listening to this, or if you know someone who is a person, with disabilities looking to get started in career in
Mm,
tech, whether it is Salesforce or just like digital accessibility in general,
mm,
please check us out at blindit.org. You'll be able to get
yeah.
some more information about, where you can get started, where you can apply, like to become a candidate. It's completely free. There's no fees associated with it because Blind Institute of Technology is a nonprofit
Mm,
organization.
yeah.
And yeah, you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well if you have any other questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to everyone listening, we'll share all those links and URLs in our description. You'll be able to find everything that we talked about in this session written in the description. So, yeah, and thanks, Ertay, so much for this insightful and empowering conversation. We wish you all the best for all your future endeavors. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. This was great, Inshu. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Builure Pulse. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you found value in today's episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving us a review on your preferred platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Follow us on our socials for more resources and updates on upcoming episodes. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Join us on social media, join the Builure community to continue the discussion and connect with fellow Salesforce enthusiasts. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing in the world of Salesforce. Thank you for listening.